to the February 18th special board meeting of the Pleasanton Unified School District. Tonight we will be not completely online. We are in the boardroom with the cabinet and the trustees, but the rest of the folks will be virtual. So to open up the meeting, I would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So just a couple housekeeping things first. Because of the governor's executive order from last spring, we are still allowed to conduct our public meetings via teleconference. If you had wished to make public comment this evening, you would have submitted a comment card. As it is a special board meeting tonight, the only public comment allowed is for the item on our agenda. There is no general public comment for items that are not on our agenda tonight. So the speaker cards were submitted online, and you'll be able to call in using your computer or your smartphone. Once you're connected, you'll be placed in an online waiting room, and while you're there, you should watch or listen either on the streaming or on the TV, because you won't be able to see or hear the meeting while you're waiting. And then when you're called to speak, you'll be moved to the meeting for comment, and we are TV 30 does allow for the audio. There'll be a public comment graphic put up on the screen during the speaker's time. Individual speakers, we're doing 2 minutes per speaker to address the board. And at that time, when your 2 minutes is up, I will respectfully ask you to wrap up your comment. All right, so with that, let's see if there's anything else I need to talk about. I think most of you by now who are watching us tonight know who everyone is who is here, but I will make some introductions. To my right is the superintendent, Dr. David Haglund. I'm Joan Larson, serving as the board president this year. To my left is Vice President Mark Miller, Trustee Kelly McCaughey, Trustee Mary Jo Carrion, and Trustee Steve Maher is joining us via Zoom. In our audience that I don't believe that you have the opportunity to see on camera, we have our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Janelle Woodward, our Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Mr. Ed Dialazzo, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Julio Hernandez, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Ahmad Sheikh Islami, and joining us this evening also is Patrick Gannon, our Coordinator of Community Engagement. Lanita is on the line, Lanita Villasenor, who is the Assistant to the Superintendent and also assists the board, will be taking the minutes and helping us with lots of things tonight, I'm sure. So with that, we have the agenda tonight, which is pretty simple. I don't believe that there's anything that we need to adjust on the agenda. So I think by consensus, we'll assume that the agenda is approved, and we'll move right into our action item tonight, which is just the item 3.1, which is report, discussion, and possible action on school reopening. But before I turn it over to Dr. Haglund to lead us in this discussion and action tonight, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege and thank the community who have reached out to me this past week since my sister's passing. It's been really wonderful to have the community support. I would like to do a little public service announcement, and that while we've been dealing with this pandemic, we've all been making choices and prioritizing, being at home with our families, and maybe we haven't wanted to go to the doctor to have our regular screenings, but I really, really highly recommend that you don't put those off. Most places are still allowing for those visits as preventative care, your cancer screenings and your mammograms and all of those wonderful things. And when you look at the data, you'll see that a lot of people are getting sick from those things that are regular things that can be treated. So I just want to recommend to people to please make your appointments and don't put off your screenings. It's really crucial that you find out early and get treated. So PSA over. Thank you. Dr. Hagelin.
Thank you, President Larson. So tonight, last week, the board called for a special meeting for us to review a reopening plan that was in line with the state's new guidance. And so tonight, we're bringing that recommendation to you. We have a presentation. We will not spend a ton of time in the presentation, but we will try to get to the discussion and public comment as quickly as we can. So in terms of just our overview tonight, we're going to review the current COVID data for Alameda County. We're going to review some of the state guidance. We're going to discuss the steps for submitting our documents, because opening in the purple tier requires a different process than opening in the red tier. We'll talk about that briefly. We will review a revised elementary reopening plan, and we will review the proposed secondary reopening plan and ask for the board to act on that. And with that, I'm going to turn the next slide over to Mr. D'Alazzo.
Thank you, Dr. Hagelin, and good evening, President Larson, Board of Trustees, Cabinet, community, and staff. So on this slide, most of you have seen this slide before. This is an update as of today, actually, February 18th. I looked at it again. These are our current metrics. So we're at a 12.6 case rate, and that is about 5.5 points since the last time I reported last week on February 11th. For the overall test positivity rate is currently at 3.6%, and last week it was 4.7%. And then the Healthy Places Index, which is 5.9%, and last week it was 7.6%. So I color-coded it this week. That metric for case rate is still in the purple, the orange for the positivity rate, and then red for the Healthy Places Index. Overall for the county, it's still at the purple tier. I want to take a second here to talk about the timeline as to when the county assigns us that tier. And so the tier assignments are assigned every Tuesday. And so the first day a county is considered to be in, let's say, the next tier, which is the red tier, would be the next day, which is that Wednesday. That's when the first day would count in that 5-day period. So if we count those days, Wednesday would be number 1, Thursday number 2, Friday number 3, Saturday, Sunday. So the first day that we could return in the red tier would be that following Monday. So it's just important to know that that Tuesday is the time when the state and the county assigns us that tier. Okay? Next slide. Okay, this slide is talking about the vaccination resources for educators. So we just wanted to briefly mention again, I talked about this last week, the 4 points of distribution in our local area are listed here. The county, there's a distribution center, and right now for us, the closest one would be at the Alameda County Fairgrounds right here in Pleasanton. Healthcare providers also can provide vaccinations, as well as retail stores. The main one, and Dr. Hagelin actually emailed staff the myturn.ca.gov website, and I'm hearing that many staff members have taken advantage of that and have been able to get their vaccinations. That's the federal vaccination distribution center, and that is at the Oakland Coliseum. That's the closest one to us here in Pleasanton. So the link is there. You can determine if you're eligible, and you could try to get your appointment with the myturn.ca.gov web link. The other one is the Alameda County Resident Vaccination Notification Form. That's another web link that community members and staff can try to get an appointment. However, that one is a little limited. That's for 65 years and older and our healthcare workers, and then hopefully they can get to the 1B phase, which would be for educators here soon. But right now, that one is primarily accepting the 65 and over and healthcare workers. Mr. Hernandez talked about the priority level information that we gave to Alameda County Office of Ed. So that was submitted, I believe, last week. And then these are just additional websites that staff can visit to get more information about vaccinations. Next page. And I believe this is Ahmed's.
Thank you. So, I guess I'll start over. Good evening, board, community, and staff. I plan to provide a high-level overview of the state's requirements for documentation. The district has completed its COVID prevention plan document. We are reporting on a regular basis every Monday to the state as to the status of our in-person reopening. The next set of documents, which is the COVID safety plan, which consists of the checklist, the COVID safety plan, and the COVID prevention plan, those requirements differ if you plan to open in the purple tier as they do in the red tier. In the red tier, they're only required to be posted on the district website and be accessible, and after about 5 days, the district can open. In the purple, they must be submitted to the county, and there's a review period, and we'll kind of go through that in the next slide. This optional piece, which was an incentive grant, which the governor had proposed, has stalled at the legislative level, and so that grant had some additional requirements for receiving those incentives around testing and such. And so at the moment, that is not the law, and that incentive grant is not available to us. So I'm going to turn over the next slide to Mr. Dialazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Shikol-Islami. Just to calibrate our team here and the community as to what the criteria are for the reopening for in-person. For K-6 schools that are in the purple tier, when we're in the purple tier, we may reopen if we post the COVID safety plan. The CSP is what we're calling it. And if we don't hear back from the local health officers or receive any feedback within 7 business days, then we're allowed to open in the purple tier. K-6 schools in that in the purple tier can only reopen if the case rate is below 25, and you recall what I said earlier where we are. We are below that 25 case rate per 100,000 per day in the county. So secondary schools may still not reopen while we're in the purple tier. We have to be in that red tier for 5 consecutive days in order for secondary schools to reopen. That's grades 7 to 12, and I already mentioned how that starts and when that count begins. And then schools in the red, orange, or yellow tiers, we need to complete and post the CSP and at least 5 days prior to reopening. So once we are in that red tier, orange tier, or yellow tier, that's the criteria that we need to meet in order to reopen. Okay, Dr. Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Dialazzo. Good evening, President Larson, trustees, Superintendent Havglen, Cabinet, Community. So on this slide, we'll begin first with elementary, which we can do in the purple, provided that our CSP plan is approved as we expect it will be. You'll see on this slide that we have preschool through 2nd grade students coming back on March 4th, and then on March 8th, our grades 3 through 5 students will return to our campuses, and we're very excited to see them. For secondary, we realize that these dates are optimistic, and we might not be in the red tier in sufficient time to meet these dates. Nevertheless, we are presenting to you a plan, assuming that we will be able to do so. And so what you see here is that grades 6 through 8 would return. The first day back would be for Group A, and they would come back on March 8th, and then Group B would come back on March 11th. For grades 9 through 12, we would have Group B coming back on the 11th because that's a Thursday, and that's why we're starting with B. And then we would have on the 16th Group A coming back, which is a Tuesday. And so you may ask, where is the Monday? That is actually a day that we do not have school. And that was already in our previously negotiated calendar. And then our alternative education students, those would be village students, would come back March 11th for the B group, and then March 16th for the A group. A few more thoughts to share. Originally, you'll recall that we had advocated to bring back 6th and 9th grade students first. However, we no longer have the luxury of time that we thought we would have earlier in the year to do that. Since we are moving quickly into the red tier, it became clearer that the dates would have brought 6th grade students back, for example, even in the purple, would be very similar to these dates. And with the limited time remaining in the year, staggering the start date even later, would quite possibly start some grade levels even after spring break. And we did not want to do that. Also, aligning the start dates so that our 6th through 8th and our 9th through 12th and our alternative ed students start at the same time helps to limit the disruption to any instruction that could occur during the transition days, because secondary teachers teach multiple grade levels, often within the same class. So instead, the sites will work out plans to orient the 6th and 9th grade students prior to the return to school date. So they will work at that at the site level. And when looking at the slide, I'd also like to direct your attention, as we just discussed, to the secondary transition dates. Parents have been notified as to their students' placements in the A or B schedule according to their last names. And that distribution is A through L, and they will be the A group, M through Z, and they will be the B group. Again, for elementary and secondary, students who are not in person on any given day or are choosing to stay home as remote learners will Zoom in with their teachers according to the block schedule or according to the AM/PM schedule that exists at the elementary level. And so that is my part tonight, and I will now pass back to Mr. Dialazzo.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. The next few slides, we wanted to take this opportunity to talk briefly about special education and the specific schedules for our students in special education by grade level and by program. So the 3 specific programs I'm going to limit it to tonight are our students in resource programs or receive speech-only services, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means. Also our special day classes that are considered mild-moderate special day classes, and then also our moderate-severe special day classes. So on this particular slide, our elementary students will attend with their general education classes in the AM/PM model, and that's the board-approved AM/PM model. Our elementary students who receive resource or speech-only services would follow that AM/PM schedule. Our secondary students who receive resource will attend their general ed classes in the 2-1-2 model. Again, the board-approved 2-1-2 model. Okay. For our students in the mild-moderate classrooms, can you, next slide? Thank you. The recommendation for our preschool is to follow the 2-1-2 model. Our elementary students in this mild-moderate class would also, again, follow the AM/PM model. Our middle schools and our high schools would follow the 2-1-2 model. So these special day class mild-moderate are typically our students who are in what we call self-contained classrooms, meaning the cohorts pretty much stay together for most of the day. Mild-moderate is different from moderate-severe in that our mild-moderate students have more opportunities or can go into mainstream classes. Therefore, our recommendation of following the same schedule as their same age peers, same grade level peers, really makes sense, because those opportunities for accessing the curriculum, for the teachers to collaborate together, to really focus in on those IEP goals that are mostly based on core curriculum, this is our recommendation, is that they follow the same schedules as their general education peers. For moderate severe programs. The recommendation for preschool is the 212. For elementary is the AM/PM. For secondary, it changes a little bit. And so for middle school and high school, the hybrid models for the Group A and the Group B, because the SDC moderate severe classrooms are typically have fewer students in the classroom, we can really maintain that cohorting group for all 4 days of the week. So our recommendation for moderate severe is to have them attend the 4-day schedule. Essentially, they're attending the A group and the B group on the Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So that's our recommendation for moderate severe. And I will stop there and turn it over to Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening, Trustee Board President Larson, members of the board, Superintendent Haglund, staff and community. If I could report to the board that we have engaged APT negotiations. We started that process yesterday. It were positive negotiations. We did exchange language. We're very close to getting to a finality. We are re-meeting this coming Monday. The indications are that we could hopefully settle our language by Monday. We, like I said, was very positive negotiations, both with our transition MOU as well as our orientation MOU, as well as other items that we are currently discussing. So we look forward to hear from our APT partners on Monday in the hopes of resolving the outstanding issues. With CSEA, we have, again, already an MOU that allows us to call in our employees, and the majority of them are already providing either a in-person service or rotating in-person service. We have a 48-hour language in the MOU, so when we are ready to reopen, we will notify them to come back all within the 48-hour limit. Next slide. So this is the proposed orientation, transition, and reopening dates, or the cadence. So orientation dates for preschool K, second grade, would be February 28th. The preschool transition dates will be March 1st to the 3rd, and the start date will be March 4th is the recommendation for preschool second grade. For 3rd through 5th and 6th through 8th, the orientation date March 2nd, again, assuming that we would be 5 days in the red for secondary, which is 6 through 8. Transition dates, March 3rd through the 5th, both for 3 to 5 and 6th through 8th grade. And the recommended opening date is March 8th. For alternative education and 9 through 12th grade, the orientation date March 5th, the transition dates March 8th through 10th, and starting dates March 11th for alternative education, as well as 9 through 12. Again, for secondary, the current county guidance and assumption is that we will be 5 days into the red tier in order for that to trigger. So this is the recommendation. And I will hand it to Dr. Haglund for our last slide.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Just a clarification.
Please.
So the slide says the 26th of February for the pre-K to 2 orientation. You said the 28th. Is it the 26th or the 28th?
I apologize, it's the 26th.
Thank you.
All right, so we're at the recommendation slide. So we're recommending that we follow the new state guidance. We will complete the CSP, CPP, and the school guidance checklist and submit it to approval. Assuming that the plan is approved tonight, we will have it ready to submit tomorrow. We'll post those documents to the district's website as soon as they're submitted. We would make any modifications that the health department's requested and then repost if needed. But we don't, given what we know about the requirements, we don't believe that there will be any deficiencies noted. So we're going to move forward. We will continue to follow SB 98 as required, both regarding maintaining remote options for families and making sure that we're providing the appropriate number of instructional minutes. For the elementary schools, we talked about already that we want to bring them back on starting on March 4th. Preschool in the 212 model, TK2 in the AMP model. Then we'll bring back grades 3 through 5 on March 8th in the AMPM model. And as Mr. D'Alonso said, students in SDC will return with their grade level peers. The secondary school plan assumes that we will be in the red tier for 5 days before those dates that we posted. And so everybody needs to understand that if we're not in the red tier, it will not trigger those dates. So let's say we are delayed a week going into the red tier, then all of the days would shift forward a week. Does everybody get what I'm saying there?
They shift
Okay.
backwards.
Well, it would push forward in the year.
Okay,
more
so
towards the end of the year.
more question to me, or question I have is, it's possible, although Dr. Moss said more likely that it would be, we would go into the red tier the following week, but it's possible we would go into the red tier earlier. So would we start secondary following the earlier date based on the red tier status?
So the recommendation is that these are the start dates, and we believe we're close enough to when the red tier could trigger,
Okay.
that it's not going to be a substantial number of days either direction. So in deference to staff and the ability for principals to be able to plan and families to be able to plan, I don't want us to have a vague start date.
Okay.
I'd rather have us set on one, and if we're forced to delay, we'll delay if we have to. But moving it forward 2 days, just because we can, I think would be more disruptive than it would be good for the system.
Thank you.
So we'll bring back, assuming again that we're in the red tier for those 5 days, we'll bring back the 6th through 8th grade students on March 8th, village on March 11th, and then high schools on March 11th as well. And Mr. Deal also outlined the plan for the moderate to severe SDC students in secondary schools. So that's our recommendation to you tonight, and I will go now to questions.
Trustees, do you have questions at this point?
I do.
Mark?
Okay, first question is for Mr. D'Alonso. So today, my understanding is we have special ed students in small cohorts in the schools, correct? Is the recommendation actually pulling away time they're in class, or are they still going to have the same amount of time in their cohorts? Do you know what I mean?
I think I do. So if we remember, the cohorts are our supervision programs, and we identified specific students that we believe needed to be provided more supervision during the time when we were not in person. So with that said, we do have some students, I don't have the number in front of me, but we do have some students district-wide who are in our special education programs who are attending cohorts, I believe, daily. So the teachers are not providing instruction in those cohorts. The students are accessing it remotely, but they're on campus. So the idea here is not so much taking time away from the students, but it's really about face-to-face, in-person instruction with their classroom teachers. And so if some of our students are now going into a situation where they're not attending daily in a cohort, but they will be with their teachers either in that AMPM model or 212 model. The one cohort that we are recommending that continues to attend on the 4-day basis is the moderate severe cohorts. And I kind of explain why. It's a smaller group of kids. We can really mitigate the social distancing because there are fewer kids. And so that's what we're recommending, is that that particular cohort come on the 4-day basis, essentially the 2 sessions that are either the Group A or the Group B session.
So the students will be at least as much in their cohorts as they are today, basically. Or at school is at least as much as they are today.
For moderate severe, they'll be
All
there
of them.
4 days, not the Wednesdays. So some of our cohorts are running daily,
Yeah.
Trustee Miller. So they are there daily. But in this model now with the face-to-face, in-person instruction with their teachers, we just are unable to do a daily schedule.
Okay.
So in order to follow the schedules that we have already approved, it is putting kids in those schedules, either that AM, PM, or AB schedule. But hopefully I'm answering your question. It is going to be less days, but students will be in person with their teachers receiving that direct instruction.
Okay. And I don't know if this is for Dr. Woodward or whatever, but student testing of, not state testing, but COVID testing, do we have any requirements? I mean, I know that was a requirement of the governor's plan for, supplemental funding and all that, but since that's kind of not happening, do we have any need to do student testing, asymptomatic student testing or whatever?
So you're, if I could take this, Dr. Wood. So you're absolutely correct. When the governor put out the incentive grants, if we were to receive if we were to apply and to receive funding, then there would have been a requirement for testing of staff and students. So at this time, there is no requirement for testing of students in order to reopen schools.
Nor do we intend to proactively do that, right?
We haven't applied for that funding, those incentive grants, so correct, I would say.
In the CSP, we state that if the state provides the funding, then we will provide access to the testing. And
Okay.
in our protocols, with regards to trying to identify symptomatic students, referral to testing is what the state requires. And so we do have protocols in place that says if this student evidences symptoms or they've been exposed, then we send them home and we advise the parent to take them to get a test or take them to the doctor to be observed. And hopefully he would order that to take place.
Got it. Okay. Okay, my last question right now is, so maybe this is for you, Dr. Haglund. Looking into your crystal ball, we had a lot of crystal ball conversation last time. So, as you know, the rules, guidelines, everything about this have changed seemingly daily. And, I think with the CDC guides, maybe we're getting a little closer to some sort of a, cohesive, I guess, set of rules. But we've had some talk about some legislation out there. We had the talk about the governor's plan. We have to talk about this AB 10 rule, which was out there, and then they kind of decided they were going to throw both away and kind of come together. And my question is if we go with our recommendation, and let's say the legislature comes up with the new AB 10, what's the risk that we're going to have to backtrack or modify what we're going to do based on that scenario?
So the AB 10 and the governors, they're actively negotiating right now. There's no end in sight yet, but they're moving forward. Nobody's going to win all of it. But I'll say this, that the AB 10 language was that by March 1st, districts had to begin implementing a plan. We will have already begun implementing our plan. So I don't believe that AB 10, the way it's currently drafted, would require us to shift anything.
Just to give you a little bit of a, a little insider. So I just got, literally half an hour before I got here, the draft of Senate Bill 86, and I have not had a chance to review it in its entirety. But yes, they are still negotiating, and so there's not a resolution at this point from the legislature's standpoint. But just for the public's benefit, the districts around the state were not unhappy with the idea of an incentive grant as is, except for a couple of things. One is that if it is our belief as well that if they're going to mandate testing, that's a cost that should be borne by the state, since that is a mandated option, and the state is required by our Constitution to pay for things that they mandate. Further, we really didn't want that to come out of our Prop 98 dollars, which are education dollars, which are to be applied toward educating students, not applied toward public health issues. So that was kind of one of the crux of the complaints about the governor's proposal. The second piece that was people were not happy with was the inequity of it, because as an incentive grant option, you know, I should say there's three reasons why we didn't like it. I'm going to get to the third one. So the second piece is that instead of applying those funds to serve all students in California, it was based on an incentive grant basis that would have just, you know, really distinguished between different pots of children in different parts of the state, and most districts weren't happy about that either. And then the third piece was, again, that the money that was in the incentive grant was not sufficient. And we have talked about that here at this dais. It was not sufficient to cover the cost of testing. So the solution for us in our CSP was to say, yes, if it's required, we would do the testing if you pay for it as a mandated cost. So I just wanted to, so the pieces are not settled yet. They're still up in the air, but they are getting closer to a negotiated settlement.
But there's no hint that they would say, for instance, you know, you have to wait until April 1st or something like, I mean, there's nothing in our recommendation that could be usurped by anything that they're talking about right now.
No, in fact, all of the guidance from the state has said is that once you're open, they won't act to close you down unless there's an outbreak, that the health department would step in to close down a school. But there's no mechanism within the tier status that would say, oh, you're back in purple, you have to close down again.
Yeah. Trustee McCarthy?
Okay. My question, I did ask this last week, but I want to get just a double check. I'm not quite sure who to ask, but where are we at in preparations for the high schools and their filters and just getting all those processes in place into those facilities? I can't remember, is it?
Sure. It's operations.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm happy to report that but 2 buildings, which will be completed tomorrow at Foothill, Amador is at 100%, and Foothill will be at 100% in terms of the MERV 13 filter replacement. The middle schools were done a month or two ago, and as well as the elementaries. And we have also deployed the HEPA air filters to all the school classrooms from elementary to high school. And so those are the additional purifications in the classrooms already as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Just one question for you, Dr. Woodward. Just in terms of timing, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this for secondary training for concurrent instruction is scheduled for when, or could you just recap the timing for that?
Absolutely. Okay, so to date, we have had numerous trainings at the elementary and the middle school and the high school. And our training coming up this Wednesday is on concurrent instructional models, and that'll be, again, February the 24th. I do want to point out, though, that we have had on September 23rd, Teaching and Learning in a Pandemic, Resilience and Reflection. On October 21st, Purposeful Assessment for Learning, Reimagining How Students Demonstrate Understanding. On December 9th, we've had Increasing Student Engagement and Facilitating Collaboration. And then, let's see, I think I'm actually reading some of the middle school dates, but the high school dates follow that as well. And then on January 27th for the high school, student-centered lesson design. So we have been engaging in professional development. As well, we are pushing out resources to our teachers on the concurrent instruction model.
Okay, and then I'm not sure who would answer this, but in terms of any equipment, technology, resources for concurrent instruction, where are we at with that status of what they need to actually do the concurrent instruction?
Mr. Sheikh Oslami?
Great question. So if you recall back in October, November, we worked with Teaching and Learning to establish what those tools would be. We created catalogs, which actually teachers could go and choose which products they would need based on a point system. Some of our teachers chose additional monitors, others chose, an additional laptop and so on. And so We are slightly delayed on our Apple products, but the MacBooks, every other product has been out and distributed, so we are just working through the MacBook Airs, the final shipment of that, so we believe that they will be out in the hands of our staff by the end of this month. And we're also waiting to receive the shipment on the iPads, and again, we also believe that we will receive those by the end of the month to get in the hands of our staff the first week in March. So we're working hard on that. We actually had a discussion earlier with some of our staff members that we do have for those who need a second device as a monitor or as a viewing, that we do have Chromebooks that we might be able to utilize, so we can work with our staff who need those second devices.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is really important that teachers have the equipment that they need, if that is an expectation. Then,
But before you go on to your next question, I just want to add that the fact is that some of our teachers won't know what they need until they're in the middle of trying to do things. And so what we want to be is responsive to the request and provide the tools that they request, as long as it's within our ability to do so.
okay, great, thank you. Good clarification. And then, I'm not sure who to ask this to. I'm super excited to hear that many teachers are being vaccinated. Is the district tracking who's getting vaccinated? Is there a record-keeping system so we know, which staff are being vaccinated? I'm not sure who would answer that.
Hernandez?
So we do not currently have a tracking system for our staff. We do have a system for priority, which was created through the county sending us a request to establish that. We are looking into analyzing how to do that without violating HIPAA rules and regulations. So we're trying to figure that out, Trustee McClatchy, but it is important to identify who has been vaccinated and who hasn't. It's the legal approach of how to ask without violating some confidentiality.
Okay, all right, I'll hold off on other questions for later. Thank you.
So I've had a lot of questions today from teachers asking to postpone it. And so I guess my question to you is, Julio, what they're saying is that they all got their vaccine this week, which is great. But when they get their second vaccine, that's when they feel like they're going to be sick. And so they're afraid that there's not going to have enough substitutes because they think they're going to be out from the side effects. Do you think we have enough substitutes to cover? I mean, if everyone's getting their vaccines this week, I mean, that's my question.
So I could answer that we currently have 111 substitutes. We did offer our substitutes the opportunity to get vaccinated on the priority list with the understanding that they would report in person. So we did get that number of our substitutes. Again, we are about at 111. We're 3 short from last school year. There is a concern, and I heard it from staff as well, that when they get the second shot, they may have a reaction. I don't know if everybody's going to have the reaction, so we don't know what that number will be. There is a vast number that have had no reaction. I know that that is a concern. As we planned, we are reaching out to our retired administrators, to our retired teachers, to others to try to increase that number above 111. I don't suspect, but yet I'm not a scientist nor a medical doctor, that everyone on our staff who are getting the vaccination will have an allergic reaction that will result in them not being present to perform the duty. The other part is that it's staggered, so although some may get the vaccination or the second during the weekend, they may get it. Again, going back to asking that question that Trustee McClatchy raised, is how are we keeping track of who's getting the shot, who's not getting the shot, when did they get the shot? We're going to have to navigate that question carefully without trying to violate some confidentiality. Again, we are prepping for that. We do have a plan to be able to engage staff and move staff around. But until we are open and we see what results are, will we really know what our needs are going to be. But we do have a plan to approach that. My prayer is that not the vast majority of our staff get a reaction.
And in looking at the data that's coming out both from Moderna and Pfizer, it's between 15 and 30% at the high level of people that have any kind of reaction after the second dose. So just they're collecting more and more data, but right now, that's what both Pfizer and Moderna are saying.
So can I follow up on that question, and I'll come back, I promise, Mary Jo. So my question, though, is, so we can't require the vaccine. Vaccines are not required to open schools. We can't ask them if they've been vaccinated. So why would we need to collect this data at all?
Again, to Trustee Carry-on's question, it's only needed, again, for this concern that staff have raised about having a reaction. As the staff has asked that question, we've attempted to navigate to get an answer. But as we're trying to get the answer, we find these barriers preventing us from even asking the question. Again, we do have a plan to address sub-need, particularly at the start with TK2 in elementary, as elementary requires a multiple subject credential, which means we have a number of staff that are going to be able to be mobilized to fill those vacancies. We hope that as we start with elementary and we go on to secondary, those vaccination periods would have elapsed, right? So because it's staged, not everybody's coming in at the same time. My big concern is the start, not necessarily the secondary, because they would have already went through the period before we get there. So that would be the bulk of our staff, not the starting end. So again, just the timing of the staggering is important as it relates to this vaccination. But to your point, President Larson, it's difficult, but I know the staff has sent me a number of emails requesting this information, and we had to be delicate in responding to that. But I want to assure staff as well as the board that we tried any number of ways of exploring how to gather that information if we had to. But the core question is, are we prepared? If it's staggered, yes, because again, the bulk of our staff, middle school and high school, the period of vaccination would have passed, assuming the board accepts our recommended plan.
Thank you.
Joan,
Mary Jo?
well,
Steve, let's,
Joan,
Steve,
may I interrupt just for a second?
is it about the vaccination question?
It is.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, to answer Ms. Carry-on's, Trustee Carry-on, my wife and I had our second dose Sunday. On Sunday, we were fine. In fact, we were driving for a good 50 plus miles. Monday evening, I did have a slight fever, a little bit of tiredness, went to bed, normal time, 10:30 or so. Woke up Tuesday feeling just fine. In fact, went on a walk. My wife did not have any type of symptoms. Actually, my symptoms were less than I get when I get the flu shot. Now, everyone is different, and I know that. But I think the experts are correct when some people have, and I think Dr. Hagman said 30%. Some get a reaction, some do not. I can only tell you that my reaction was quick, painless, and I moved on.
So I have a question on the vaccines too. So you know, my question would be is if you have a reaction, whether you're teaching remotely or teaching in the classroom, I mean, you may have the same need for a substitute, right? So to me, I mean, I guess coming into classroom is more challenging if you're not feeling well, but still, I don't know, it's not really a question, it's a comment.
Save those comments for later. Trustee Carry-on, would you like to ask you some other questions? Oh, you were done. Okay. Trustee Maher, did you have any questions before we take public comment?
No, just a quick comment. I'm glad we're moving forward, and I appreciate the hard work put in, and thank you.
All right. I actually don't have a lot of questions because all of the questions that we've been asking have been answered over the last several weeks and months. So we will move to public comment at this time. I would ask a favor. If you have spoken to us before and you're coming tonight to say the same thing, you know, we have absorbed a lot, you know, the emails and the comments, and we've listened to a lot of it. Obviously, we do want to hear from you, and we are keeping to the 2 minutes tonight, but I think we're up to something like 25 people who wish to speak. So 21? Oh, 26, he's saying it's higher than that. So I would ask that, again, if you've already spoken to us and you've emailed us, we have read your emails, we have heard you speak. If you have something new to add tonight, we'd love to hear what that is. So with that, we'll go ahead and open public comment. Again, we'll have 2 minutes to speak, and then I'll ask you to wrap it up.
Thank you. And I also want to clarify that at the point we start public comment, we just, in respect of everyone's time, we stop accepting additional comments. So our first few names, we'll start with William Lutz, followed by Carla Brown, and then Janine Martin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Over the past several months, I've watched every single school board meeting. I've listened to all the board statements in addition to concerned parents who waited for their turn to speak. I feel it's time for me to share and make a statement. I'm the parent of 2 children at Fairlands Elementary with another child currently at Sunshine. The time to open the school is not now, it's not a month from now, nor is it in the fall. The time to open the school was months ago. It is apparent that the board has prioritized the teachers' unions over the well-being of our children. The current state of homeschooling is not working. I'm a police sergeant, and because of my job, I do not have the luxury of working remotely. When I come home from work, I see the frustration in my children, the confusion from the day's lessons plan, and the overall wear on their mental health from not being able to interact with their friends and teachers. Not to mention my wife, who works a full-time job, is now a full-time teacher to 2 students. How she keeps our house afloat is a miracle unto itself, but I assure you, she'll be the first to recognize that she should not be teaching the children the curriculum the teacher should be. I could write a lot more about my frustrations and the fact that the children are suffering and how apparent it is that the board and the teachers unions do not care about the well-being of the children, but I won't. It is nothing you all haven't heard before. But I will conclude my email to you all with this. Teachers are essential workers. They need to be in the classroom with the kids, not only to teach the curriculum, but to monitor the children's overall health and well-being. Teachers are the #1 reporters to Child Protective Services. They, more than anyone else, know when one of their students has issues at home that need to be addressed by CPS or even law enforcement. This is a dark truth that needs to be recognized. When the schools are reopened, I'm terrified to see how many children will confide in their teachers incidents that happened at home during remote learning. Incidents should have been caught and reported months ago, went unreported because children didn't have anyone to turn to. Please do the right thing, prioritize the children, follow the science, open the schools. Schools all over the country and locally have opened safely. It is time for the Pleasanton School District to do the same. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Carla Brown, followed by Janine Martin, and then Christine Lutz.
Good evening, Board President Larson, School Board Trustees, Superintendent Haglund, PUSD staff, and parents. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Carla Brown, and I am the Mayor of Pleasanton. I'm speaking with you today to reaffirm the supportive and cooperative partnership the City of Pleasanton has developed with the Pleasanton Unified School District over literally decades. As Pleasanton's mayor and as a city council member before that, I have participated in many joint meetings with PUSD trustees. I believe our working together as a team has played an integral part in providing the high quality education and friendly environment for PUSD students and families. First, I'd like to thank our teachers for providing the very best education available while limited to distance learning during this pandemic. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. From the beginning of the pandemic, the city has responded and continued to provide support to the community and the school district through monthly PUSD council, liaison meetings, and supporting both a COVID-19 testing site food distribution at the fairgrounds for our residents. The city continues to support the district, including getting teachers vaccinated as soon as possible. Pleasanton, Dublin, Livermore, alongside Alameda County, have worked closely with Stanford Valley Care and Sutter Health to facilitate a mass vaccination site that officially opened yesterday. I was proud to be there. That was February 17th. And they are looking forward to vaccinating 1B educators in the coming weeks. This is an important step to ensure confidence that teachers and other educators can return safely. Sorry, I'll just finish up if I could. Second, the Pleasanton City supports returning to the classroom as soon as it's determined safe by the Pleasanton Unified Board of Trustees. Let me be clear. This is a decision that rests solely with the Board of Trustees. Either by individual calls or in small group meetings, I've extended the city's support to each and every one of you. Finally, the city has been and will continue to be here to support the school district and our Pleasanton families. Once PUSD deems it is safe to resume in-person learning, the city will recommission school crossing guards and resource officers. In addition, I'm vice chair of the board of the Wheels buses, and I've already spoken to our executive director, Michael Tree, about a startup in the near future as soon as you let us know. We are ready. So with the limited time left in this school year, I hope you will consider the help of the city staff in sanitized Wheels buses when allowing students to return to in-class learning for those families that feel safe. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, next we have Janine Martin, followed by Christine Lutz, and then Darren Daukus.
Hi. I had a prepared statement to bring to you, but this afternoon when I saw the Oakley Board of Trustee news hit the news and go viral, and the disgust that they presented themselves, it really changed my dialogue with you. What I'm asking Pleasanton School Board is to really rise above, set the example for our state. It's an embarrassment what Oakley did. That's going to go viral across the country. We're going to be a laughing stock. It's really horrendous. You always tell students to do more than what's expected of them. Well, why don't we have you do more than what's expected of you? It's great and it's the right direction that you're planning these minimal reopenings 2 days a week, a few hours each day, but do more than that. It's really expected to do more than just the minimal. We can't get by like that anymore. And we really have the opportunity here now with the Pleasanton School District to make a mark on the map and rise above and really make some noise and do it the right way and show the rest of the country, show our students that we can do it the right way. Thank you.
Okay, and not seeing Christine Lutz in our room, we're going to move to Darren Daukus, followed by Wen Lee, and then Devansh Pandey.
Okay, great, thank you. I just want to say I fully support the district's revised reopening plan. I mean, it sounds like a great start. I was expecting to say something different, but with all the positive news in this meeting, I feel very optimistic. We want our children back in school. My son wants to return to class in person to meet his first grade teacher for the first time, face to face or mask to mask. And I expect the school board to continue to advocate for the best interests of our students and that they put students' needs first. I look forward to future and continued cooperation by the teacher and district employee unions. Okay, so thank you to all parties involved.
All right, next we'll have Wen Lee, followed by Devansh Pandey, and then Christine Chen.
Hello, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, I want to say thank you to the board. I mean, I see the plan is pretty considerate. However, I also want to say the current remote teaching mode, though unfortunate, is because of the pandemic. and we see the pandemic is still not totally gone. Okay, so seeing the pandemic is not gone, or the harm has not been reduced to the level that is not dangerous yet. So I don't see why we should have a full back to school mode. However, I don't see a problem if families are still allowed to choose remote learning. And last, I have a question. What will the school do if after resuming the class teaching, some infection cases just come up, and so we'd like to see any response, approaches after if some bad cases happen. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Devansh Pandey, followed by Christine Chen, and then Cheryl Atkins.
All right, so I know a lot of us have been really appreciative of what's happened tonight and all of the planning and all of the effort that's gone into this plan and establishing this plan for the future. So I want to have all of us, whatever comments you are going to make tonight, whether they're frustrated or thankful, let's remember that yes, while the right time to act may have been 3 months ago, the best time to act now is now. And thank you to all of the trustees. Thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you to every single member of the district, every single district staff, every single teacher. I've seen only a tiny glimpse as to how hard you all work to get reopening done, or to teach your students, and to just generally, and all of the other staff in the district, to generally make this district run properly, and all of the effort you've put into reopening. Thank you to all of the parents, even if you've been hurtful or rude or angry, because I think we can all recognize that parents are incredibly important to the school district. They're incredibly important to what goes on. So thank you to each and every parent for what they've done. Thank you to all of the students, and because all of us have gone through this. We've been through the distance learning, we've been through being directly part of it, and we've almost come through unscathed. We're almost there. So I would just want everyone to remember to say thank you to everyone that's been involved in this, and that we'll all get through this together.
All right, next we have Christine Chen, followed by Cheryl Atkins, and then Michelle Verkeilen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Dear Board, District Management, and the Pleasanton community, my name is Christine Chen. I am speaking tonight to express my sincere gratitude for all your efforts on school reopening. Finally, we're moving forward with reopening dates. It is not easy for any of us. I really appreciate it. While we applaud the fact that now we have reopening dates to work with, it's not time to raise a champagne glass yet. Transition into in-person instructions, how to make up the loss of learning from the last 12 months. Tons of work are ahead of us. Every day, this question would hover over my head. In terms of contents learned, where would California kids stand when compared to those from other states with schools open since last August? Lately, my 9th grader approached me and said, "Mom, I don't feel like I've learned much for the last 12 months, even though teachers gave me most A's." Well, PUSD is heading into the right direction to reopen. The loss of learning is an extremely bleak reality. Our kids are so far behind. We need to take immediate actions to help kids recover from that loss. So the district is doing the minimum 200 minutes instruction hours per day per SA 98. But the question is that really what we could sleep on with satisfaction? Definitely not, especially when we are facing a surge of failing grades. The solution to address that issue should not be giving credits to DNFs and calling it a day. Instead, it should be finding the root cause and hashing out plans to increase in-person teaching hours as many as possible. Make Wednesdays actual teaching days. Make the afternoon hours meaningful teaching time. With less than half of the secondary students going back to campus, the logistics can and should be worked out. During the transitions to reopening, our parents understand the challenges and are willing to deal with them, ranging from scheduling issues to logistics for pickup and.
Ms. Jen,
We acknowledge.
can you wrap up your comment, please?
Yeah, very quick. We acknowledge that the quality of teaching under the current proposal might not be ideal, but we're glad we're making steps forward instead of no steps at all. In addition, by no means the current plan we have should be a plan for the next fall semester. Our students would need a full-time, 5 days a week in-person learning then, nothing less than that. Finally, I would say we want the district to really consider the instruction options over the summer to help kids catch up on the academic slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chen.
Okay, next we have Cheryl Atkins, followed by Michelle Verkuylen, and then Emily Longnecker.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Haglund, School Board, and Cabinet. My name is Cheryl Atkins, and I'm a first grade teacher at Fairlands. I'm not here tonight to ask you not to open schools. Community spread numbers are decreasing. Many teachers, including myself, received our first vaccine this week, and our administrators at our sites have been working very hard on the logistics of reopening. We should all be excited. If you work a job every day from 8 to 5 for 20 years, enjoyed your job, did your best work, received positive evaluations, and one day your boss came to you and told you they were going to add an additional 40 minutes to your workday, what would you think? Would you expect to be compensated for the additional time? Would you expect a conversation about this or to be told? This could create a real problem for you. You might have daycare issues, a second job, or going to school to better your profession. This is what our district is telling us to do. They have put out a schedule that adds 25 to 40 minutes per day to our daily schedule, but have not taken anything away. They expect us to do the same job, be an in-school teacher, a remote teacher, and now do them both at the same time and be a concurrent teacher. We've heard the district give us compliments and acknowledge how hard we are working, but adding to our already overloaded day makes those compliments feel ingenuine. It has been implied that this schedule needs to be done this way because more instruction is good for kids. There isn't a teacher around that wouldn't agree that more in-person instruction is good for students. But what about the health and well-being of the teachers providing the instruction? The job is beginning to feel near impossible, and there are no more hours to give. So I am here to ask that the workday schedule be adjusted to the workday that we have had here in this district for 20 plus years, or to ask you that you compensate us for our extra time. And I don't believe those are unreasonable requests. I hope to see the district work with the association and come to an MOU agreement which includes these schedules. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have Michelle Verkuylen, followed by Emily Longnecker, and then Frida Moser.
Good evening. I am Michelle Verkuylen, President of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools. We are happy to see that our community spread is down and that work on our school's ventilation systems continues to take place. The expectation would obviously be that all health and safety measures would be in place before students and staff set foot on campus. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of consistency in the safety protocols within and across campuses. The guidelines cannot be watered down because it is too difficult or too costly. The health and well-being of students and staff, and because of the nature of this virus, the health and well-being of our families and community is at stake. As always, it is important to include educators in conversations around reopening. As APT leaders, we continue to work on and meet with district management to come to agreements on our changed working conditions in the midst of a pandemic. We hope this process to be finalized soon. Many surrounding districts have been very supportive in providing conditions to allow for teachers to continue to teach even with extenuating circumstances. We hope this holds true for our district as well, so that there will not be any interruptions to students' learning. Timelines should not merely be based on what we can do. They should be based on what will make for a smooth transition back into in-person teaching and learning. Elementary schools are at the end of their second trimester. Many assessments occur during this time so that teachers can communicate student progress with their families. It is important to not disrupt this process so that families can receive this information in a timely manner. Please consider these timelines as you set return dates. When we return to in-person, it will be like the beginning of school. Time will be needed to teach routines and establish procedures in students' new environments. This is true for all grade levels. What students are used to experiencing in school will be different, just as remote learning has been different. Please talk with and prepare your children to understand this to help them prepare for this shift. With our secondary schools, there are many concerns around the lack of stable cohorts in the hybrid model. When we read county guidelines for cohorting, it allows for one educational cohort and one extracurricular. Our educators seek clarity in how movement between classes supports this guideline. Thank you in advance for asking the hard questions and considering the myriad of factors at play in reopening schools. Of utmost importance is that Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools. Thank you.
All right, next we have Emily Longnecker, followed by Frida Moser, and then Mary Corpora.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for all of your hard work and time and effort in this difficult situation. I sent you an email that describes most of my concerns. There's just one thing I wanted to add after today having the meetings that I have with my coworkers. An issue that wasn't brought up in the email became of concern with teachers, starting their vaccine and not going to be done with their vaccines before school starts. And because of the risks, they're going to take their sick days just to make sure that they get their second dose before going back to school. And I can understand and respect that decision. As a parent of a middle schooler in Pleasanton, I'm thinking with both hats, my teacher hat as to the disruption that will cause to have so many subs. And I definitely don't want my daughter to have to endure a transition and a transition with a sub. So I would ask you to consider, just like what was spoken earlier, the timeline, what's most efficient way to open up a smooth transition, not just for the teachers, but for the students as well. Because having a sub, I don't know how many board members can recall either being in a class with a sub or actually having that job role. The kids in the class are not going to get the same quality of education. They're going to get supplemental stuff and just fillers. And while our kids do need that social interaction, I think the smooth transition is much more important, as is the consideration of many of the teachers' viewpoints because of their health needing that second shot. So once again, thanks a lot for all your work.
Okay, next we have Frida Moser, followed by Mary Corpora, and then Nadia Razi.
Hello, this is Frida Moser. I spoke to you before, and yesterday we sent you about 40 students video, and I'd like to play their voices.
To open our schools. Please open schools. I miss them really much.
I used to love school, but now I don't. I want PUSD to reopen schools because it's hard to learn on Zoom and it's distracting. Learning has become extremely difficult remotely.
And it's really hard for me to do my work with all those distractions. Even though my teacher is really good, it's still not the same. I don't like staring at a computer for the whole day to get my work done. We really need to go back to school because it's a lot harder to learn and take in the information when we're just staring at a screen. It's unhealthy to be on the screen all day. I get headaches when I stare at the screen. I'm constantly staring at a screen and I get many headaches. And with social distance learning, I kind of feel sad and depressed. And most of our mental health is plummeting as fast as our economy is.
I've never actually set foot on the campus.
I haven't really met any of my classmates. And I don't even know what some of the people in my class look like. And I haven't even been to my school. I miss all my friends and teachers. I miss the social interaction I had at school. And I'm tired of looking at a screen. And I really miss that interaction that I get at school, that I can talk to people and like do projects and group projects. I want to go back to school because I'm really missing the social interaction.
I think teachers have done the best they can, but isolation and staring at a screen is not healthy for any of us.
But in remote learning, it's very lonely. Please let us go back to school. I don't like Zooming anymore. Please open up the schools because not seeing my friends is making me really, really miserable.
Thank you.
All right, that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mary Corpora, followed by Nadia Razi, and then Marilyn Weinstein.
Hi, my name is Mary Kapora, and I am a parent of a PUSD 5th grader and 7th grader. And I wanted to voice my support of all the PUSD staff and teachers and my support of the district's original opening timeline. I believe that there's a silent majority of parents in this district who feel very strongly that staff and teachers should feel safe returning to the classroom. These parents may not always have time to attend these meetings or stand on corners or don't have the money to pay for an airplane skywriter, but we are here quietly hoping that reason will prevail and that someone will eventually stand up for our friends and our neighbors, our PUSD staff and teachers. So here I am. If we follow at the very least, the original proposal of the staggered 2, 3, 4 weeks in the red timeline, it gives teachers just a little bit more time to get the vaccinations that they deserve. With teachers just eligible now, this timeline allows for greater vaccination coverage and greater safety for all. At a time when variants that may be more transmissible to children and women are becoming more prevalent, it seems like a pretty reasonable compromise. But I also defer to the staff and to the teachers, and I support them fully in their considerations for returning to the classroom. I want to commend them for all of them for the awesome job that they've been doing during a not very awesome time. And I am humbled and very, very thankful for what you've all been doing for our kids. Thank you.
All right, next we have Nadia Razi, followed by Marilyn Weinstein, and then Steve Padden.
My name is Nadia Razi, and I teach at Foothill High School.
Thank you for this opportunity. Reopening communication has thus far been misleading and intimidating. District management has deliberately pitted parents against teachers as an attempt to distract from the lack of logistical progress in school reopening plans. Parents and teachers want the same thing: what is best for kids. Parents are being asked to choose a hybrid model with no idea of what it will look like. Despite what Dr. Woodward claimed tonight, we have had zero training on how to teach concurrently and have not been asked for input on best practices. We haven't yet received the technology Mr. Sheikh al-Islami mentioned. Any enhanced learning opportunities for in-person students would create an inequitable precedent that advantages some students over others. Have we analyzed data about which student subgroups are opting for in-person learning versus remote? A cursory look at our rosters reveals that students with IEPs, English learners, students with failing grades, and students of color are staying remote. The district's haphazard and incomplete plan will widen our already significant achievement gap. Teachers will be sitting at our desks teaching on Zoom, but with students in the room. For what benefit? What considerations have been made for increased mental health support for students and staff? Students' mental health has been a primary reason for wanting to return in person. How will the trauma and lack of motivation be handled when we return? Are we hiring more counselors? How will we periodically check on the mental health of everyone on campus? Have Wi-Fi speed and bandwidth on campus been increased? Are we still required to keep classroom doors locked in case of an active shooter, or do we now keep them open for ventilation? When will teachers eat, drink, use the restroom if our passing periods are spent cleaning? Despite Mr. Hernandez's erroneous claim that we have enough substitute teachers, this doesn't even take into account the need that we will have due to leaves of absence or COVID-related illness or bereavement days. We have no logistical or practical ability to do our jobs, and the students will suffer. Please listen to teachers and counselors so that we have the proper materials to reopen schools effectively and do what's best for kids.
All right, next we'll have Marilyn Weinstein, followed by Steve Padden, and then Sarah Campbell.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to address the board this evening. It's been very interesting hearing what everybody had to say thus far. I actually don't think that there is a silent minority of teachers speaking. I think the majority of teachers who had been speaking in the previous meetings had been pretty vocal with their desire to either keep the plan as it was or not open for a even longer period of time. And it's for that reason that I've come to speak this evening. I'm taking this time to speak up for the countless teachers who have reached out to me on social media and through other means to tell me that they stand with me in my effort to get our kids back in the classrooms. I want them to know I hear you, I see you, and I thank you on behalf of all parents and students in this district for the adjustments you've made this year and for your tireless efforts to teach and reach our kids. Thank you for reaching out to me. Under the pressure of other teachers and the teachers union, I am sorry that you're not as comfortable coming forward for fear of how you may be treated. I'm not good at politics in any sense, so I'm not sure of what politics are involved there that make you reach out to parents instead of being able to speak. But again, that's what I'm here for tonight. It's reassuring that we're all on the same team with the common goal of safely returning to in-person learning. I speak for you, and I'm empowered by the applause you're silently sharing with me right now. So thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Steve Padden, but we don't see him in the room. If you are here and you haven't used your name, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Otherwise, we'll move on. Oh, it looks like Gabriella Padden.
Are you able to hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Members of the district and board, I want to thank you all for your diligent efforts on reopening schools. I fully support the plan put forth by the district, and I believe it's a very necessary first step. However, I want to make it very clear that this needs to be viewed as only a first step and not a solution for the rest of the school year. If this plan were to be presented outside of pandemic conditions, it would be laughed out of the room as woefully inadequate in terms of educational outcomes it can possibly deliver. Since we are, of course, in a pandemic, compromises must be made. So we must now take this important step forward by adopting an opening plan as soon as possible, in spite of its imperfections. Due to decisions made at various levels of our government, for the past year, our children have been disadvantaged in their access to education more than almost anywhere else in the world. Regardless of where we lay the blame, it ultimately doesn't matter to our children, as they are the ones that will bear the burden of the academic and social, emotional learning gaps that they now have. These gaps will undoubtedly continue to grow under this plan, given that continued very limited instructional hours. Our children must one day compete with their peers on the world stage, both academically and on the job front. We as a community must come together to help minimize the impact created by their schooling gaps. Today, I hope we take this first step forward on closing this gap by opening our schools. However, we want to make it very clear, as parents, we expect that many more efforts will be made in the near term to continue increasing access to education for our children. We do not accept the district's proposed plan is the best we can do for the rest of the school year. We hope the members of the board and district do not accept this either. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Sarah Campbell, followed by Cora DaCosta, and then Maria White.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Sarah Campbell, and I'm a parent to an 8th grade student at Pleasanton Middle School. Although I'm thrilled to hear we're going back starting in March, I am nervous about what is to come. I feel that a lot of tension felt between parents and teachers is due to a lack of transparency and clear answers from the district office. We all have expectations, and I think it's fair to parents and teachers to know what our students' day will look like well in advance. We're all excited about the return date, but now we need a plan of what our students' days will look like. The concern for me is that we are calling these cohorts in the letters that we are receiving. I'm a substitute in the current cohorts, and I'm hopeful that this is not what our students are returning for. They are helpful for the current situation, but not the answer. Another question would be, will students be Zooming from their seat in the classroom, or is while the teacher is teaching to the remote kids, or are we providing a classroom aid to assist the teachers while teaching concurrently? Will intervention happen in person? And what will the hours be for the upper class? Will the middle school and high school students go class to class, or is it one teacher, one room all day? I feel it is important we ask detailed questions and receive detailed answers. The date is great, but a plan is more important. Thank you.
All right, next we have Cora DaCosta, followed by Maria White, and then Laura Hall.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cora DaCosta, and I'm a parent of 2 PUSD students, and I teach biology at Amador Valley High School. I request that, if safe, schools reopen in person after March 29th. I was fortunate enough to receive my first vaccination against COVID-19 this past Tuesday, February 16th, one of the first dates open to teachers. Other PUSD teachers and personnel are also just receiving their first vaccination this week and next week. The New England Journal of Medicine states that the efficacy of the vaccine is only at 52% between the first and second dose, but has a 95% efficacy 2 weeks after the second dose. Many PUSD teachers will be receiving their second vaccination starting March 9th. The FDA states that most commonly reported side effects, which typically last several days, were pain at the injection site, tiredness, headache, muscle pain, chills, joint pain, and fever. More people experience these side effects after the second dose than after the first dose. Being that we cannot return to campus if we have a fever and our bodies require the time to build up immunity, I respectfully request that we return after March 29th. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Maria White, followed by Laura Hall, and then Paula Sims.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am joining you guys again with a few more logistical questions, since that's typically what I try to focus on as a science teacher in our district. That's just where my mind goes. I asked last time at our last board meeting actually about the sub protocol, and I was given the answer that we do have enough. But my question really is, how many of those 120 or so subs have actually been documented and have been said or have specifically said that they are actually willing to work in person? Saying you have 150 subs doesn't mean anything unless they've actually committed to come back in person. I know in previous years we've had over 300 subs, and yet we have not actually had 300 subs come in and actually be willing to work. Last week alone at my site, we had to have teachers cover a different teacher's class because there wasn't a sub, and this is during fully remote. I'm also really curious about the protocol for subs, where when you wake up with a symptom, what does that actually mean? Because right now, if we're to show up on campus, we have to fill out a questionnaire, and that questionnaire denies access to campus if you have any symptom whatsoever. So if I wake up and I have a fever, does that mean I automatically need to quarantine? Does that mean I have to be remote for the day? Those are the questions that we still have not been provided answers to, and that, quite frankly, need to be answered already. Please take the time to address this publicly so that everyone understands. I can only speak for high school, but some other things I'd like to mention, just that our community understands, that concurrent is not what many people think. It's going to look like in high school, students sitting in a room, Zooming with students while they're at home. There's no way for me to run this meeting, literally, as you guys are doing right now, without the help of multiple people. You have people broadcasting this Zoom. You have people sitting in a room. You have other people doing microphones. We don't have that. So in order to have any interaction, we will literally be Zooming together in a room while other students Zoom. And that's not going to change the lack of social interaction. Last thing I'd like to mention is that the teachers are the union. And as we hear these negative comments about the union, just remember that this is not a separate entity. We are the union. The teachers that you so desperately want back in the room with your kids are the same people who've been fighting from the beginning just for safety. We don't have the ability to prevent reopening. As our wonderful mayor has already said, we don't have that ability. The board is the only entity that can decide this,
Ms. White,
and their decision will be whether we come back or not. Thank you very much for your opportunity. I apologize for going over my time. So sorry.
Right, next we have Laura Hall, followed by Paula Sims, and then Alexis Dubil.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for hearing me again tonight. Thanks to our district leaders and our school board members for planning this special meeting tonight. I appreciate all the hours and tireless effort you've put into this new plan. Please don't delay in voting yes on this new plan. Some may call me the privileged minority, and that those who aren't voicing their concerns are the silent majority. Whatever you want to call us, each group deserves a choice in their child's education. Please give us the choice in what is best for our children and families. So far, we have only been given the choice of remote learning, and this new plan will allow those who are comfortable returning to have the choice. For those who have doubts, you will never know what will happen until you try. It's important these kids get into schools now, because if we continue to try and reach that imaginary bar, we won't ever go back. We need our kids to go back. We deserve the choice to send our kids back. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Paula Sims, followed by Alexis Dubiel, and then Andrea.
Hello, my name is Paula Sims, and I'm a parent of 3 Amador graduates, wife of an Amador teacher, and a proud Amador teacher myself. Cliff and I have over 61 years of combined classroom experience, most of which have been with PUSD. In other words, we have been fully invested in our school and community and care deeply about its members, students, and our colleagues alike. So to borrow a phrase from Bill Nye, please consider the following. 1, does the school board and community realize that if and when we return to the classroom, it cannot be business as usual? With concurrent teaching, how will the high school in-class experience be any different from the remote experience? Regardless of training, for safety purposes, the reality is that teachers will have no option other than to simply continue using the same remote methods, but now have to divide their attention between a group of students in the physical room and another group at home, both on computer screens. 2, with students and teachers on campus using Zoom, cameras, and the myriad of other platforms used by professional educators, will the site bandwidth be sufficient, or will we need now to teach with our cameras off and a lagging internet with the possibility of being dropped out of our own Zoom class? This is not an effective learning strategy. 3, some staff have recently received their first COVID vaccine, with the second vaccine coming mid-March. So what is the concrete protocol for when a teacher has symptoms on the day of teaching? Sounds like we have 111 substitute teachers, but have we actually asked how many would actually accept a job on campus? Because I predict not many. I'm curious about the plan, what the plan is when there are not enough adults to cover classrooms. We certainly cannot combine classrooms. That would not be prudent nor safe. And if we're looking at the 30% of 800 teachers is 240. We don't have subs for that. One infection to bring home to our loved ones, or heaven forbid, one death, is not worth the risk of returning to campus before it's completely safe to do so. Considering the mental and physical well-being of all stakeholders, I respectfully recommend that secondary remains safely remote for the remaining weeks of this school year. Thank you.
All right, next we have Alexis Dubiel, and then Andrea, and then Lena Bravo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the children in our community. I'm a former Pleasanton school teacher and a former Pleasanton school principal from many years ago. I currently have a 6th grade daughter at PMS, and I have 2 sons that graduated from Amador. My daughter's teachers at PMS are rock stars. Susie Robinson deserves an award for her efforts this year. That being said, when the remote schedule was posted in August this past year, I was disappointed and quite frankly disgusted by the lack of instructional minutes offered to the middle schoolers. To this day, no one at the district office, the principal at PMS, no one can explain to me why there is no school on Wednesdays. The lunacy of having a full day off of instructional time for cleaning when there's nothing to clean is shameful and such a disservice to our students. We've gone from 30 hours a week instructional minutes to 12 hours a week. Insanity. Since the school shut down in March, I have been teaching my daughter and other students in the community to supplement their learning and their instructional minutes. I teach free of charge so that no student is left behind. My students are desperate to learn, desperate to see their friends, desperate for normalcy. The emotional toll it has taken has no limits. Open the schools. What is deemed safe to me, or safe to my neighbor, or safe to a teacher, you cannot measure. Follow the science. The CDC and top infectious disease doctors in the nation say open the schools now. We've talked in circles since March. The district has had since March to figure this out. This is not the teachers. Stop meeting, start opening. And 6th grade is considered elementary per state guidelines. Thank you.
Okay, well, we don't see Andrea. If you're calling in by a number, another number, if you could raise your hand. Otherwise, we will move on. Okay, we'll move on to Lena Bravo. Lena, if you're there, can you raise your hand, please? All right, we will keep moving. So next we have Matt Guidos, followed by Ryan, and then Jerry Ann May. So Matt, if you're in the waiting room and you didn't use your name, please raise your hand. All right, we'll move on to Ryan Keenan. Keenan.
Hello, I'm Ryan Keenan. I have 4 students in PUSD. I'm opposed to this reopening plan because concurrent instruction is not a feasible educational option, and plan places undue stress upon the teachers of PUSD. The problem with concurrent learning is that it overpromises and underdelivers. The in-person instruction will be a Zoom session. Additionally, while the teacher is focused on classroom management, he or she will be unable to attend to the online learners. Forcing teachers to try to be in two places at once will lead to a decline in the overall educational instruction. The problems are even further exacerbated in the secondary grades. My daughter will only see her teachers once per week. The time spent in person with the teacher will not be quality time because it will be shared with the Zoom students. The end result will be an education where the teacher cannot be fully present for either the online or the in-person students. As a parent, this puts me in an impossible position because whether my daughter stays at home or returns to in-person, she will be in the presence of a teacher who is overworked and half present. Most teachers are receiving their vaccines this week and next week. Therefore, they will probably be taking days off at the exact moment of the proposed reopening because of the negative side effects of the vaccine. Our teachers will not have full vaccine efficacy until about the end of March. Are we willing to sacrifice the mental and physical well-being of our teachers for an extra week of substandard in-person concurrent learning? We should delay opening the schools until after spring break. This will give all of our teachers the opportunity to become fully vaccinated. Additionally, our administrators will have the time to find a better solution than concurrent instruction. As a parent, I'd be willing to change my in-person or remote preference to avoid concurrent learning. And I think many others would be willing to do the same, as it is in the best interest of our children. Concurrent learning will be a disaster and should be avoided at all costs. It is a disservice to our students and our teachers. The half measures of hybrid and concurrent learning will lead to an education that is half as good or worse. The board needs to do what's best for the education of the children, and concurrent learning is not the answer. Thank you.
Okay, and we don't see the last two speakers, so I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if you're with us. Jerry Ann May and Rochelle Dean. Okay, we'll go with Zoom user.
Hi, Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay, hi. Sorry about that. This is Jerry Ann May. I am the parent of a 10th grader at Amador, and I wanted to mostly ask questions to get more detail. My daughter has said that she does not want to return to school in the middle of a session as feedback, and she was very adamant about it. And I think, unfortunately, what I'm seeing is that the reason why she wants to stay remote is so that there isn't any more disruption in the academic day. What I'm concerned about is the concurrent teaching. And like other parents, I am concerned it's going to lower it to even more so than just remote. So I wanted to actually see an example of what a new class day would be like for a high school student. That would help me also give the information to my daughter so she doesn't worry. The other thing is I wanted to ask, would there be a drop dead date for returning for secondary schools if we don't meet the red tier for a significant amount of time? So I had that as a question. I also want to understand the social distancing that would be occurring in the class, as well as class passing. And then my final question is, what is the plan for when a COVID case is found with the on-site teaching? And then the final comment I have is I fully support the teachers. I also thank the board and staff and Dr. Haglund. I know you guys have been working extremely hard, and this is an impossible situation to solve. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted to do one more last call for our last speaker, Rochelle Dean. If you're with us, please raise your hand. All right, not seeing Rochelle. that is our public comment for this evening.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for those good comments and questions. I did want to briefly address a comment that was raised by one of the speakers about civility and what some other school districts have done. And I know people have said to me, "Oh, don't read the stuff," and you're probably really upset by the things you're seeing on Facebook. And I said, well, I don't read those things. People are free to email me and call me and discuss these things. But I have heard from friends that there has been a lot of negativity back and forth in our community. And we've been dealing with this issue for a long time. This board, as well as boards before, we really do believe in the community of character traits, and we try to portray them as best we can. I guarantee you would not see the behavior that you're talking about that's in the news today from this board. But we also, as a general rule, receive respectful emails and calls from the community members. And we'd like to keep it that way. So if I would ask that those of you who are speaking to each other on social media, try to learn how to disagree agreeably instead of disagreeing disagreeably. And I know this is a hot topic, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and it's a lot of passion, and there's a lot of fear out there, and it's been a tough time. But just as we would treat you with the utmost respect, we'd love to see you treat each other that way as well. So with that, I would ask if the board has further questions and comments. Mark?
Yeah, a couple questions. Ahmad, could you address the internet bandwidth questions that were raised by several callers?
Sure. It's a great question. We have been working on our bandwidth for a while under the Measure I-1 projects. The backbone of our infrastructure has been all upgraded with new fiber. Additionally, we have over the last, I think, year been recabling the majority of our schools. And we asked our contractor to expedite the wireless access point upgrades. And that work has been completed at all our elementary schools and our middle schools, and the contractor has committed to completing the remainder of the wireless access point upgrades at the high schools that first week of March. So we'll be ready for the reopening of school.
That is great news. Thank you. A comment on sort of the vaccine second dose thing and whatnot is, to me, scheduling that and whatever side effects you're going to have. I mean, I guess you could teach with a fever from home remotely, but having to schedule and drive there is going to be an issue regardless. So I don't understand why that's an issue, whether we're remote or in person. So my biggest question, though, is Dr. Woodward. So I do think that I am concerned about the quality of teaching in a concurrent model, and I do, worry that we've gotten into a routine with the remote to the extent that teachers are used to doing it and so forth. This throws a wrench into their daily life, and how do we do this effectively? So I really do empathize with the teachers in that regard. Having said that, though, I think one caller raised an interesting point about, is this the end, this hybrid 2-1-2, whatever, is this the end, or are we really preparing to move to something more, I'm going to call it more normal, but you know what I mean, more robust in terms of in-person and so forth. And this leads me to the kind of thoughts about next year. So as we start ramping up for next year, we had this conversation last week, is, it's quite likely the model next year will involve concurrent teaching at some level as we begin anyway. So where I keep coming back to on this issue, which is a real one, is what better time to get good at it than now? And so I think the question is are the activities that go on in this remainder of the year, we have potential state testing and all these other things. I mean, is that going to make this a bad time to learn how to do concurrent teaching, or is this as good a time as any to learn how to do that and to get really, really good at it?
Thank you for the thoughts and the questions. Several things. Before we even broached this as a concept, we looked at other districts and to see what they were doing. We've talked to districts across the state that have reopened sooner than us. And concurrent teaching is a strategy that does come with some level of struggle, just like our transition to remote learning came with some level of struggle. Just like when a new teacher is in a class and they've never taught. When I first became a teacher, that was accompanied with plenty of struggles. Over time, we get better at what we learn how to do. Do I think that this is an optimal place to be? No, I'd rather have all students on campus. Do I think that we learn and grow and that we will figure it out just as we've done? Absolutely. And given the remaining time that we have, one of the important things we need to consider is bringing back childhood and teenhood and the return to an experience that supports students emotionally, mentally, and academically. And most of the concerns that we have heard about what children suffer when it is remote learning are not tied to the academic side of their house. It's tied to the isolation and feelings of aloneness that they feel. Do I believe our teachers have the skill set and the potential to learn to do this well? Yes. Do I believe that they will in time? Yes. Do I believe that our families and our students need to allow for time for transition and to have grace and flexibility? Yes, all these things are true. Having said that, as we look forward to next year, our best hope is that things are as close to normal as they can be, and we can return to school in a full model. Having said that, we don't want to go backwards and not implement new strategies that we have learned during this course of time. And I believe that as we finish out this year, our thinking about options for next year will continue to expand so we can design a thoughtful and intentional, multifaceted approach that can support our students who want to remain in remote learning or those that want to come into school, and that could still potentially involve concurrent instruction. So maybe I've spent a little bit too much time answering the question, but those are my thoughts on that right now.
I think that's just a wonderful answer. And you brought up something else that I was wondering about too, is, are we the first district to do this? And clearly we're not, that there are others. So what I take away from what you're saying is that this is a model that has been employed successfully. It is not without its struggles. We certainly have the capability in our teachers to do this. They are, as somebody said, rock stars. I mean, I've watched them. We did the open house a couple of months ago, and unbelievable what they're doing. And that there is an advantage to going back in concurrent mode now in terms of the learning that we're going to gain that will help us for the go forward. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee McCaughey?
So, my thoughts on what you were saying, Dr. Woodward, on concurrent instruction. I would just say, I do feel that this will be a great time for teachers to explore that. I want to really emphasize that what we all want from parents' perspective, teachers, when students are on site, is to really focus on the engagement process, engagement with students, with their peers, and students with their teachers. And I think that we need to keep in the forefront. I feel that If concurrent instruction can help with the engagement with the students who are remote, I think that's great. Let's go for it. But I am a huge proponent of flexibility and choice, so that with teachers, I feel like if there's some flexibility of how they do it and some freedom for that, so that it's not taken away from the instruction. And that's my biggest concern, if teachers are having to get back, feel comfortable setting up a new classroom, establish a classroom community that will be new, a new type of classroom environment. I really want to make sure that the training that the teachers are getting and the support structures and the opportunity to collaborate with other teachers and celebrate successes, what's working well, what's not, to really maximize that time this spring so they can perfect it, and then give them permission to say this is the trial period so we can make it effective, because I don't want to have a concurrent instruction model. As we know, there's tons of strategies that can help support student learning. This is just one of many, and that we expect teachers as professionals that they're going to incorporate many other strategies, and that this is just one. And so I don't want to have all this concern about concurrent instruction. It's really just giving permission for teachers to feel comfortable learning that and having our students, once again, be engaged with their teachers. And that's what I don't want to lose sight of. That, you know, and as mentioned earlier, as mentioned with the CDC groups, and the timing of their instruction may be less, or their time on site may be less. But the difference is that the emphasis will be them working with their teachers with academic support. So that's my comment on concurrent instruction, but that's not really what we're being asked to do tonight. It's our task at hand is really thinking about the timeline and the reopening timing for our schools. So I just want to make sure that we're staying focused on that. I think I just have one other question, and that's based upon some of the concerns for teachers, and if they're not feeling comfortable. This is really more of a question for maybe so our parents understand what are the options for teachers if they are not comfortable reporting back right away. And so I don't know if that would be Mr. Hernandez, you kind of just recap so our parents can understand. You know, the options for teachers, if there are concerns about that vaccination and timing and all that. Maybe you could just clarify that.
Thank you, Trustee. So we have now for a period of over 5 months been approaching our staff, asking them if there was a concern, a medical concern or other concerns, to reach Nancy Bronzini, who's our coordinator of risk management and benefits, to be able to engage in the interactive process. I've received several questions from our association about what the interactive process is. And the interactive process is when either the employee or management suspect that there is either a concern, an illness, a performance, that we engage that employee to discover what it is that we could assist the employee in the way of accommodation. So if there is an employee who is concerned, the first step is to communicate with Nancy Bronzini to schedule an appointment. At that meeting, it's a confidential meeting where confidential matters are discussed, such as health issues or other concerns. Then the district has an obligation to attempt to accommodate that employee's needs in order for them to perform their duty and work. Depending on the case, depending on what the issues are, those accommodations are either offered or not offered to them. But that has been something that we've reached out to. Since reaching out, we have had 19 of our employees access the interactive process, and we've been able to accommodate those employees. Again, we request any employee that does have concerns to reach out to Nancy Bronzini or myself in the Human Resources Division so that we could assist them in the interactive process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. So just to make sure I understand, so if teachers have concerns, there's a process in place. And what happens if for some reason those accommodations cannot be made? Then what happens then?
If we cannot accommodate the employee, then that employee is then placed on leave, unfortunately. But again, it is our legal obligation to attempt to do everything we can to accommodate that employee.
Rarely is there a circumstance where we can't do that. Often we have to guide ourselves through what we call a job study that is issued to a physician, and the physician then makes some recommendations, and then we engage on what it is that we can do. Sometimes we reassign the employee to a different duty. We attempt to keep that employee employed. But when that is not possible, then unfortunately, the only other choice is to engage the leave process.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions for right now.
Trustee Kirian?
So I just wanted to agree that about concurrent teaching, I want to just recognize that our teachers are the experts, and I feel that concurrent teaching should be like one tool in their toolbox. I don't want it to be mandated that they must be doing that. They are the experts. What? Oh, thank you. So I was just saying that I feel that teachers are the experts, and I just want to acknowledge how hard they have been working. And I'm just going to be honest and say that I'm really having a hard time. I'm very conflicted because I love my teachers, and I know a lot of them are stressed and anxious about this. And as a teacher myself, I know. But I do want to assure you that we are following the guidelines, and we are mitigating the risks. And this is a very, very difficult time for everybody. We are in a pandemic, and I just want to say that I have heard you. I know a lot of teachers have reached out and said that they want to wait to go back to school. I'm just not sure that that is actually an option right now. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Trustee Maher?
I don't really have a question, John, but I do have a prepared statement. Would you like me to make it now, or it has to do with what people are saying, or wait till after we vote?
Is it longer than 2 minutes?
No. No.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
It's probably about 3 minutes. I
mean,
think,
Steve, of course you can say what you need to say.
Okay. In my many years of service to PUSD, the COVID pandemic has brought about the greatest challenges in education. Trying to meet the needs of all our students during the pandemic has been difficult for all. I know that teachers have gone above and beyond to meet these demanding needs. Despite our best efforts, there is no replacement for in-person learning. And for this reason, I believe it is time for our students who opt for in-person learning to be back in school. Teachers, I hear your concerns regarding concurrent teaching, and you are correct. It presents many new challenges. However, I believe in your ability to rise to the challenge and meet these demands. Teachers throughout the country are teaching concurrently and using other methods. No, it isn't ideal, and it's different. But teachers are finding a way to be successful. PUSD has excellent teachers, and I believe we too can find ways to be successful. No, it will not look the same as teaching did before the pandemic. There will be a great shift in how you teach. I have observed teachers in the concurrent model. I have seen that teaching and learning looks different, but it still can be successful. I believe in PUSD and our teachers, and I believe in their ability to meet this challenge. I wouldn't be voting for our kids to go back to in-person if I didn't. Like other frontline workers, nurses, doctors, first responders, grocery clerks, etc., I believe it is our profession's time to make adjustments and to serve our students. Teachers, I hear your concerns. Speak with your site administrator. They are there to help with this transition. I'm not up here saying that this transition will be easy, that it will not have challenges. I know it will. What we have learned is that perseverance and grit are traits of successful students, and our demonstration as teachers of these traits are such wonderful lessons and a model for our students to follow. I believe in our collective ability to meet the challenges ahead. Educators have always done this. Thank you, Joan.
Well, gee, I wish I'd made my comments before you did, Steve. That was, I think you really encapsulated how we feel, if I could say that for the board. We've said this before. We said it back in October, in August, in November, in December, in January. We wouldn't be voting to do this if we didn't believe that this was the right thing for kids. and that we have made all of the efforts necessary to keep our staff safe and our students safe. There isn't, as opposed to what some community members might have alleged, there isn't some, the board's not following the teachers' union rules or the whatever rules. We didn't open school in January as we had planned because the circumstances changed and the law changed and we were not allowed to. So we have been trying to open schools for quite some time. But none of us would, we don't believe that what we are asking our staff to do is impossible. We don't believe that what we're asking our staff to do is dangerous, that we have done all of the mitigation, we have followed the science. It's just a really challenging time for many of us. And on a personal note, I just have to tell you that I just spent multiple days in the hospital. I spent the night on a COVID ward in a hospital because they had moved my sister from the skilled nursing facility, and those patients coming into the hospital have to stay in a different place while they test them and wait for them. And then when she was moved into the palliative care area, I was allowed to spend the night. And, I'm sharing this only to tell you that we are all afraid. We're all concerned. We are very excited about the vaccines. Super happy. There's more news to come about that as well. Look for some press releases from ACOE as well tonight, I believe. So we're very excited about that. But we're following the science. We're following the CDC. We're following our state guidelines. And I believe that the staff's recommendation is a measured recommendation, and I wholeheartedly support it.
President Larson, can I make a motion?
You absolutely can.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the Cabinet and staff recommendation, which reads, the administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the pre-K-12 reopening plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion?
Yeah, the one comment that I would have is that, so I think the version I'm looking at here may be different than what was on the screen version. I think what I heard you say, Dr. Haglund, and I would agree with it. No, it's not the same. It's not different. Is that if under the unlikely scenario that we moved into the red tier next Wednesday, that would be a little bit too fast to get those secondary schools back in session. So I wouldn't want to go earlier than the dates that are proposed on the, on the recommendations, right? So that's the only thing is I would say with that stipulation.
Trustee Miller, if I could just clarify, I think my feeling in terms of the plan is that we trust the district to finalize the dates. If for some reason I mapped out, on the meeting today with Alameda County, they said it's unlikely that we would get into the red next Tuesday, but potentially we could. And I'm sure that Dr. Haglund would make adjustments if needed for secondary. But that said, if hypothetically we got back into the red on the following Tuesday, which would be the 2nd, I pushed back the dates, and it would literally be for secondary, it would be bring students back grades 6 through 8. A week from that, instead of the 8th, it would be the 16th. Bring village, and all that pushes back 1 week. So I anticipate Dr. Haglund would tweak dates for secondary if for some reason, by magic miracle, we got back into the red tier next week. Is that
Yeah, I guess
I just want to be clear.
The recommendation is on page 13 of the presentation.
13.
And it identifies, if we're in the red tier, that the opening date would be March 8th for 2nd through 8th grade, March 11th for the remaining days. I do not anticipate, regardless of what happens, changing those dates unless, as I said before, we're forced to push it further out because we haven't gone into the red.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that that's clear on
Just
that, that's all.
To clarify what you said earlier, Dr. Hagelin, is you'd push it back 1 week for example, if
Depending on what we got in the red tier, yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, we got into that last week, so I don't want to get stuck in the weeds with dates.
Any other discussion? All right, there's a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation.
President Larson, can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
I've been thinking about this for a long time, so I just want to put it out there. Does anyone remember, I'm going to put this open out to the floor, what the significance of March 12th is?
It was the day that we just were sent home and into distance, remote closure of everything.
So that's really important to remind everyone that we're almost approaching a year for all of our students being remote. And so it was something, I'm a person that kind of holds on to dates. And I was really hoping that we would not make the 1-year anniversary for our children being remote. So if we accept this motion, it's going to be a huge celebration for our children, all of our children, not just my 3, but all of our students.
All right, I'll call the roll. Trustee Maher?
Yes.
Trustee Carrion?
Yes.
Trustee Makashi?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Aye as well. I just want to, I know also how hard the teachers have been working, and we have seen some really stunning, creative, just really out of the box, amazing teaching happening. I anticipate that to continue, that those teachers will continue to do a wonderful job. But I also have to give a shout out to our district office staff. And there's been a lot of aspersions cast on intentions, and I just have to tell you that from my experience, not just as a board member, but also as someone who works at the Alameda County Office of Education, and I see what district staffs have around the county, but in particular ours, of course, because that's my favorite one. The amount of work that has happened in this year, and it has been a year, above and beyond the regular duties of the regular jobs that people have, has been, just round the clock effort and continual flexibility, continual, just, okay, well, now we have to adjust to this. And that part's exhausting too. And I just want to thank the cabinet and your staffs for your continued devotion to our district and to our students and to our staff here. Your thoughtful processes and your, when we challenge you with something and we say, okay, no, we want you to go back and do that again, or we know, okay, so we like your recommendation, but we're going to change it. So go work on it some more. It's just been a lot. And I think on the behalf of the board, I just really want to express my appreciation to all of you. Doesn't mean the work's over. Doesn't mean you cannot go on vacation yet. But sorry, but I just really need the public to understand how much this year has cost everyone in terms of their emotional stability, their family life, their just their workload has been tremendous. So thank you.
Can I add something really quickly to that? And that is, said it beautifully, but I look at each one of these people, Dr. Woodward, Mr. Dialazo, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Sheikh Al-Islami, Patrick, and our leader here, and thinking about what you guys have done the whole time. I mean, I love sports, and it's like not every team can have Joe Montana at every position. Sorry, that's what we have here. I mean, you guys, Dr. Woodward, I mean, you've just done an amazing job of keeping the students right front and center, trying to work something out. Mr. Dialazo, I mean, you're a conduit on the whole COVID thing. I mean, talk about the tail of the dog. I mean, you're just being whipped around all over the place, but always on top of it and everything. Mr. Hernandez, the water that you've had to tread, the tight wire you've had to make on all these things to try to keep this district functioning has been incredible. And Ahmad, I mean, you in the middle of all of this stuff, getting all of our Leidixon school work done and breaking ground on all these other things, perfectly clean audit, certified budgets and all this stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. And then, I can't thank you enough for your leadership, Dr. Haglund. I mean, you have taken the brunt of all of the things that have been going on. You've had to be providing leadership to these guys the whole time. And I feel like we've been in great hands the whole way. And I'm very, very, I know we haven't always voted the way you wanted us to on things, but, I think we've come together on a good plan. So thank you all very much.
President Larson, could I just make one?
Yes,
I
please.
promise I'll make it quick. I just wanted to just shout out again, thank you, Dr. Haglund and the cabinet for your hard work, and a huge shout out to our teachers. They're in the forefront, and they're going to be the ones hitting the pavement. And so I wanted to just say that again, my personal gratitude for my children's teachers and for all the teachers that are serving our students. My hats go off to you all. And I think it's really important to say that.
If I could add.
Again, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Start the timer, please. I just want to make sure that we appreciate all of us. I'll speak for the cabinet. We appreciate your kind words, and you're absolutely right. It's been a rough year, and we've got an absolute A team in every single chair, and I could not do this without you guys. So I'm very, very grateful for all the energy and the time and the sacrifices that you guys have put in to get us to this place. And I know we're not done, so I wanted to say thank you for that. But I also want to thank our principals who have been carrying the brunt at the school sites. And there you talk about the middle guy getting thrown around by the sea every time something changes. And so they have tried their level best to make sure that they're keeping everything functioning at the school site while they're thinking about this transition to whatever this new phase is going to look like. And so they need to also be congratulated and thanked for all the work that they put in, and their families too, because when a leader has to sacrifice time and go to work on a weekend and whatever, same thing with teachers, that means other people are sitting at home not getting the time that they would like to get. And so thank their families as well. And the one group that came back first and has been there since the beginning, doing everything we've asked them to do, I just want to make sure that we're all collectively thanking our classified staff members who have been here and outreached, made sure kids and families had food. They've delivered services right off the get-go as soon as they could with cohorts. Our classified team members, they get the MVP award if we're giving out awards tonight. So I just wanted to make sure that they got thanked as well.
All right. With that, we are adjourned.